30?
30?
Okay. Anyways, the number 30 is really fascinating, roughly 30 in statistics, because if you want to take a sample, like let's say we want to take a sample of 1 million people to ask them what their favorite food is, right? We know we don't need to actually ask 1 million people, so how many do we need to ask?
30.
Well, it turns out, in most samples, you can ask roughly 30 and get roughly the same answer than if you ask 3,000. 30 is just a magical number where, unless you're trying to get 99.9999% confident, you can ask 30 and get roughly the same thing. That's why it's not coincidental that the Dow Jones Industrial Average people talk about every day has 30 stocks. It's representative of the market. So let's call this the number of stocks in your portfolio, right? And let's call this the risk of your portfolio, right? If you have one stock, then your risk is pretty high. We don't need to put an exact number here. We just need to get the concept that your risk is pretty high. If you have 2 stocks, your risk comes down a little bit because you got 2. And as you get more stocks, your risk comes down even more. But there's a point at which, roughly around 30 to 40 stocks, where you can't diversify away your risk anymore. Now this is assuming you have a diversified basket of stocks. If you have 30 tech stocks based in California that sell cloud computing software, you haven't diversified your portfolio. But if you have 30 diversified stocks, you get to around here and you kind of level off in risk. So this is the risk that you cannot diversify away. I call this a systemic, or the best way to really think about it for you personally is it's market risk. And essentially, if you have a different, think about it, there's around, like what, 5,000 stocks in the stock market? The S&P 500 has 500 that you know of. Let's say there's 2,000 main stocks in the stock market that have real volume that you could actually buy. If you bought 10 stocks that are diversified, you've got some diversification. If you went all the way to the extreme and bought all 2,000 stocks, you are the market. And you know the market has some amount of risk. And so there's a point at which you can't diversify away that risk anymore by buying more and more stocks. You'll never get to zero risk. What you actually try and do, as a quick sidebar, and then we'll get back to things, is that you can take this down a wee bit more by diversifying out of US stocks. So for example, let's say your portfolio isn't just US stocks, it's US stocks plus Japanese bonds, plus some real estate, plus some timber in Russia, plus some investments with your friends. I mean, that helps lower your risk a little bit more. Not too much more, but a little bit more. Hey, look, guy. Need something out.
No.
All right.